Hi, so for my SPAD 489 hat project, I am going to be discussing employer liability, key terms and definitions of employer liability, two cases that fall under employer liability, and also how I'm going to use this in my career as a sport manager. So first off, what is employer liability? Now, employer liability deals with the legal responsibility of the employer when an employee has done a wrong. This can be a civil or criminal wrongdoing. However, if it is within the scope of employment, the employer is held responsible for that wrongdoing. We are going to get to scope of employment soon. Another key term is vicarious liability, also known as respondent superior. Respondent superior in English means let the master respond. However, in good detail, what it talks about is that when an employee has done good, usually the employer would take credit, obviously. If a coach does very successful, that university is going to be like, hey, we take credit for hiring him. Also, if that coach does a wrongdoing, the same goes with the employer. They have to take credit if it was in the scope of employment. Now, ultravirus is different in terms of it's the opposite of respondent superior, meaning that the employer can actually disassociate themselves from the employee if the wrongdoing was outside the scope of employment. Now, scope of employment is kind of a gray area of a topic, only because scope of employment is not a one-size-fits-all kind of term. Different businesses, different areas of work is going to be different within the scope of employment. Taking sport in for the coaching, for example, scope of employment is going to be during practices, during recruiting visits, during games, obviously. And also traveling as well. If they are traveling to an away game, they are still representing that university. However, for scope of employment, let's just say for a coach, after the game is over, after media and everything, and they drive and go to a bar and hang out, wrongdoing happens there, that's outside the scope of employment, and that is just the employee themselves, not the employer, right? Also to talk about is the employment process, talking about hiring, supervision, retention, and training, and usually talking about in a negligent sense, how can you, as an employer, train your employees properly, supervise them properly, hire them in a sense where you know the background of the person you are hiring, and also retention, more meaning how are you going to handle an employee if they have doing wrongdoing that you know about, that it's not out to the public media just yet. Now, two cases that are important about employer liability. One is talking about Fleming and AAU. So, Famala Fleming suing the AAU and her former coach Kincaid, as it says here, for allegedly negligent hiring, supervision, training, all the senses with AAU, as she was sexually assaulted by Kincaid while she was a basketball player and while he was her coach. Now, obviously, in the supervision process, the AAU was not supervising them well, and they had no idea about this assault until later on. Also, this is within the scope of employment. You are her basketball coach, and the improper training that he received and the AAU gave him of how to handle a situation, especially when they're two different genders, colliding and working with each other as a player and coach relationship. So Robertson Southeastern is another good case where Allie Roberts sued Southeastern University in Florida, her former coach and athletic trainer, for improper care for her concussions. Now, in this, it talks about how Southeastern did not properly train the athletic trainer nor the coach in concussion protocol. How after her third concussion, she should have been referred to a doctor. However, this was the fourth concussion, and they wanted to ship it under the rug and not discuss it. Obviously, Southeastern is held liable for this because during practice, she did receive her concussion, while she was cheerleading, and the improper training that Southeastern gave and the improper supervision of the athletic trainer and her coach for not reporting this situation to higher authorities. Now, how am I going to use this as a sport manager? So my career choice, if all goes well, is to be a head coach of a university football program. So I need to know about the employment process. Obviously, the hiring process, the people who I'm bringing in into my culture, into my staff, are they the ones that I want to represent my school, right, and represent my team? I need to do deep background checks to make sure that these coaches and staff members have not done anything wrong in public eye and other places, bringing that into my culture, into my team, and possibly more issues are going to rise from that. Also, supervision. I'm not going to eye them like a hawk and make sure that they're doing everything that I need to do. I need to have the trust, but also supervise them if coaches are going along with players, if shady stuff could happen in the recruiting process that we have seen. So need to make sure I supervise them well. Retention, obviously. If there's a situation that needs to be handled, can I handle it properly? Give them the proper punishment for that situation. And obviously training. Need to train them how to handle student athletes with mental health issues. Have to train them properly of what can go on after practice, after meetings, and such on. I need to know the employment process to make sure that my players, my staff, and my coaches are all throughout safe. Also, vicarious liability for those under me. So I need to make sure that these coaches and staff members, I will support them, but also my reputation will also be on the line if they do a wrongdoing under my watch and during their scope of employment. I need to be also held responsible for allowing them into my program and for doing such action. Also, scope of employment on and off the field. I've touched on this, but I need to properly train my coaches and my staff what to do and what not to do during recruiting visits, during traveling, if we're traveling to games, how to handle themselves properly as they're representing my team and also the university's team. So that is my rundown of employer liability. Have a good day.